people are claiming to perceive a reality that science has no explanation for.
So yes, I absolutely believe in ghosts, I believe in spirits, and I kind of sort of believe in the soul.
Life after death is an interesting issue because we don't have anything conclusive that says the survival hypothesis is real.
I was born into a family who believed in the paranormal, and we had a lot of paranormal activity in our home, so I always assumed everyone did, and it was just a normal thing for me.
When I grew up, my mother's parents were very much so into, I guess, what I would call the paranormal. They didn't use that word, as that word wasn't known then, but they would talk about experiences with the other side. They would talk about all sorts of subject matter that was far beyond what science was considering today. And I heard story after story after story. Now, as a kid, I listened because it was fun, especially we'd gather around a campfire during Halloween and they would tell the best ghost stories ever. But they were just stories. Now, I have to wonder today, with the path that my wife and I have now gone down, if that wasn't a preface to this path that I was supposed to take.
I am the founder of the Hollywood Ghost Hunters, along with Kane Hodder, who plays Jason in the Friday the 13th, and Ari Mihailoff, who plays Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Generally, we show up, the ghosts get scared.
We have an infinite universe, and we have 100 billion neurons inside our brain. And given all of that, it is unfortunate we know hardly anything about it. Yet that's what life is all about. And the answers to what people are experiencing now are probably buried within.
So what we're talking about are finding out answers to the biggest questions out there, and how a person cannot be drawn to studying this phenomenon. It really astounds me. You know, I get it as a scientist. If you're looking from the outside in, you're seeing people, you know, that you would consider amateurs making their own study of it. But, you know, what else are they to do? You know, someone has to start these investigations initially. I mean, in the early days of science, you know, scientists were considered the outcasts, asking questions about the nature of reality that was contradictory to the status quo and the zeitgeist. They were the rebels, they were the outliers, they were on the fringe.
So nobody wants to communicate.
My opinion on life after death prior to being involved in the paranormal, I did believe that there was an existence beyond death, but what that capability was interacting with the living, in my knowledge, didn't really exist. There wasn't a connection between the afterlife and the living. Well, that was proven wrong.
I've been interested in the spirit world and the paranormal since I was 13.
Earliest recollection I have of anything relating to ghosts or the afterlife was actually through my church. I was raised Catholic, and anybody who is raised Catholic knows that there's a deep mythology of the liminal world. Everything from Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead to purgatory. So there's a deep belief that the spirit world can connect with the living world.
11 years ago, I was a complete skeptic. And it wasn't until I met my wife, who had an interest in the paranormal, that I start to see things differently. She asked me to watch paranormal shows with her, and I could sit through about 3 minutes of it and say, this isn't real, this stuff isn't happening, this is for television only. But then one Valentine's Day, she She said, I want to do something different. I said, okay, what would you like to do? She said, I want to go ghost hunting. And I was like, oh boy.
Ooh, what is this? Oh, this is where we came in.
So I did some research online, found a specific hotel here in Phoenix that had a reputation for being haunted, and booked the weekend. Thought I was done. Then I realized, wait, they're using equipment. She's going to need something to investigate with. So bought her a night vision camera, digital recorder, and EMF meter. Thought, okay, now I'm done. Figured this equipment would sit in the closet for the next 5 years till eventually we threw it away. Well, we went on the weekend. And when we got back, I was absolutely amazed.
My apologies if you're upset, if I've done something to upset you or didn't mean to. We'll try again.
We were one of 2 guests in the entire hotel that weekend, 7 floors. There was no one around to disturb us or to affect our audio, our pictures, or our video. When she started reviewing, we had images in the photos I could not explain. We had answers to our questions. What was your name? Names were being given. Why are you here? Answers were being given. I was absolutely shocked and spent months trying to debunk what we had captured. I couldn't debunk it, so we returned again and again and again, realizing that the answers kept coming, the images and the photos kept appearing. I think we investigated that particular hotel over 50 times to date, capturing additional evidence each and every time.
It's cold in there.
It wasn't until I got in school and started to tell other people about the things that happened in our house that I realized that that might not be a very good idea, that I don't think everyone has this kind of life. And that's when I began to realize that we were all different.
My paranormal experience just kind of came out of nowhere. My grandfather, I was living in Chicago with my mom, and my grandfather had died. He got killed in one of those cleaning the gun accidents, if you get my drift. And he wanted to be buried in Paducah, Kentucky. Now, he didn't have any money. My mother didn't have very much. So we put him on a train, and we rode from Chicago to Paducah. And when we got there, we found out that his name wasn't Kelly, that his last name was actually Greek, right? So I found out it went from 100% Irish on his side to 100% Greek. He was actually from Sparta. We put him to the funeral home, and then my mom says, let's find a place to stay, because this was all snap bang. I mean, it happened and we were gone. So we walked downtown, and it was, we were trying to stay close to the funeral home, and we saw this place, a perfect movie set. I mean, it was 2 stories, a dingy part of town, the neon was flickering, the whole deal. And we walk inside, and the door guy, the receptionist guy, my mother says, do you have any rooms? And he goes, well, I've got one left. And she goes, well, how much is it? And he told her. She goes, oh, okay, we'll take it. And he looks at her and he goes, I have to tell you, it's haunted. Now, I'm 13 years old, right? To me, I just got the gold ticket to Disneyland. Woohoo! We get up there, and to explain it, it looks like a volleyball court sideways. It's all wood, big rectangle. And on each side of the room, there's a rolling bed. And the neon's coming through the window. I mean, it's just, the atmosphere is perfect for a horror movie. Well, middle of the night, I hear my mom scream. So I sit up and I look, and here comes her bed, come flying across the room. I mean, not flying, coming fast, rolling. And then I realized that my bed is rolling, and they both smashed into each other in the middle of the room. It was exciting and scary. When I heard my mother scream, naturally I thought something was wrong, and I was going to get up and defend her with my whole 13-year-old self, And then when I realized I was going, now I'm scared. I'm like, what the heck is going on? And we just looked at each other. And my mom finally just went, well, I guess the guy downstairs is right. Well, even back then, now this is 50 years ago, okay? My mom was a very smart woman. We set about trying to debunk it. Now, this is before anybody even knew what the word debunk was, right? So we took a glass and we laid it on its side, because that'd be a perfect circle, nice circle, and rolled it, and it wouldn't roll. I mean, we thought the floors might have been warped, and that's what caused it. A truck went by and vibrations. So I went over and I got behind it and I shoved it from the wall, and it went about 3 to 4 feet. Now these both went at least 10 feet apiece. So after that, the easiest way to say, I was hooked.
Most people, in fact, are hesitant to say that they have these kinds of experiences which defy explanation and hide in silence because of fear of ridicule once they share their experience with others.
I had a near-death experience when I gave birth to my first son. And that was back in 1979. And at that point, after I had that, I completely lost my fear of death. Because I know it's not what people think it is. You don't just die and cease to exist. That's just not probable. And then having the experience that I had cinched it for me. So I'm not afraid of death at all. Now, dying is a different subject. Death and dying are two different things. I'm not a fan of that. I don't want suffering or anything like that, but I definitely believe that the human spirit goes on. And I don't personally, I know a lot of people feel that some spirits are trapped here by their trauma of their death or whatever, or they're just trapped in a loop or something. I think that they're here because they don't want to leave.
Have I ever seen ghosts? Of course I have. That's why I started this. I mean, I've seen so many ghosts and things like that. I will tell you one that was actually really cool. I was in Liverpool, in England, with a group called Anubis Paranormal, and some of my friends from Premier Paranormal in Scotland, and we'd gone there to ghost hunt a couple different places. And we'd gone to the Norwich Theatre, and everybody was having all kinds of experiences except me, right? So I was a little, what's going on here, right? So anyway, we go down to the basement, and the basement, the way to describe it, it is wide open, and then midway through there's a pipe about this big that goes right across the middle so that you can't go any farther. You could step over it if you wanted to, but it's put up there so nobody goes past that. And I look over and there's somebody standing like right where this light is. I could have touched him, right? And he's looking down like this. I thought it was like somebody looking at a K2 meter or their phone. And I looked back at the girl that was the head of Anubis to see if she was going to yell at their guy for being on the other side. And she's like, I turn around, absolutely nothing there. And I turn back and I look at her, she goes, "You saw him too, didn't you?" And I went, "Yeah."
We're not here to harm you.
Ghosts can take many forms. I've seen them on FLIR imagery. We've captured multiple human images that have walked across rooms and halls with no body heat whatsoever. They are room temperature. We have seen multiple and recorded shadow figures moving across doorways, hallways, and captured it on film. Now, the definition of a ghost or a spirit, they take multiple forms. So have we seen them? Yes, we have.
I don't think the word ghosts actually fully describes what we're maybe having contact with.
The departed. I think they're earthbound. I think some of them are lost souls. I think some of them want to stay here. A lot of religions say that you have to take that walk down, and get judged. A lot of people probably don't want to do that.
Ghosts are not always whispery, transparent, elusive creatures that go bump in the night. More often than not, they appear like another person, but they maintain their appearance only for a very short period of time.
There are spirits absolutely everywhere. One of the questions we always get is, okay, I want to capture EVPs. Where should I go? Should I go to a cemetery? Should I go to a haunted location? The fact of the matter is, you can capture them almost anywhere. We've gotten them in haunted locations. We've gotten them in a moving car going 75 miles an hour. We've received EVPs. We've gotten them in airports. We've gotten them in so many places that you wouldn't expect an EVP to show up.
I have not personally seen a ghost, and I have no intention of personally seeing a ghost. What I love to do as a host of Paranormal Now is have in-depth conversations with those who have, and those who investigate and research this almost full time. And that includes just regular people, it can include scientists and psychic mediums. And they all have their own personal journey.
Is there anyone here?
We do a live show on KGR radio called Entity Voices Paranormal Evidence. So we review evidence from investigators all over the country and the world showing some of their best captures. We have seen things that we have not gotten the opportunity yet to experience. We've seen many great shadow figure captures. We have seen objects move. We have seen chairs slide.
Hallucinatory? Well, 25% of the time, so says research, more than 2 people observed that apparition. Again, discounting the possibility that there is some kind of hallucinatory reaction on the part of the experiencer, resulting in that kind of misperception.
I can't see shit. Well, that's amazing. This glass is weird. It's amazing the building.
The evidence that is showing up today far outweighs anything that's been shown before because of the availability to technology, cameras, phones, and everything else.
The brain can obviously play tricks with our reality and cause us, of course, to misperceive and come to wrong conclusions. Wishful thinking that a deceased relative is alive and interacting with us also will tend to bias us very much.
The first recollection I have of hearing a ghost story of someone within my world was a friend whose grandmother had passed away. And shortly after her passing, was after the funeral, his mother had come home to the room of the grandmother. And when she went into the room, the rocking chair that the grandmother would sit in started rocking. And at the same moment, the room was just flooded with the smell of roses, which were her favorite flower. More than one sense was being utilized. This was as real to them as any other part of their life. So that was the first sort of goosebumpy story that I got.
First thing we need to answer is, what's the difference between a ghost and a spirit? And most people don't know. A ghost is something that's still trapped here, earthbound, right? For whatever reason. They're afraid to make the voyage, or the journey, whatever. The other ones is somebody who's already crossed over and comes back. That would be a spirit.
When a spirit leaves the body, we believe they take with them many things. They take memories, they take their free will, they have the ability to travel wherever they want. And we know that for a fact because we run a haunted hospital in Ajo, Arizona, and we have spirits that have literally given us their names and communicated with us on a regular basis when we're there. Well, my wife and I flew to the Philippines, to the Diplomat Hotel, one of the most haunted locations known in the Philippines, and investigated it overnight. My wife asked a question, and her question was, I'd like to communicate with the spirits in this building. And a voice came through on her recorder that says, I can help you with that. That voice was Michael from our haunted hospital in Ajo, and he has shown up in other locations as well. The memories that the spirits take with you, and again, this is theory, this is a personal opinion based off of our research, but those memories remain. But they are added to what we call a collective consciousness, a universal consciousness, a shared consciousness about life, about the universe, and everything that occurs in it. And the reason we believe that is because we can ask a question about an individual that has passed away, and we can get the answer from any other spirit. It doesn't have to be that particular spirit that we're trying to reach. We can get answers from any spirit.
This is the ghost lounge. All the way over here.
I cannot tell you how many times people have said to me The reason I got into ghost hunting was because the night my grandmother died in Pennsylvania, I got up to get a glass of water and she was standing in my kitchen. How many people have said I woke up in the middle of the night and there was my dad standing at the foot of my bed and found out that they'd passed? And I mean, I have heard this at least 100 times, and I think it's probably the most normal ghost hunting story. Now, obviously they can travel. They were a different part of the country and people are seeing them right in front of them, okay? But I think that's somebody who's passed and comes back. Now, are the ghosts stuck in one place? I don't know. But I think they're familiar with that place. And, I don't know how many other spirits are hanging around, so they just stay where they're at, unless somehow you can, get them to cross over. And I've actually done that one time. After you do that, you just kind of figure that there's nothing I'm going to do in my life better than what I just did. Well, here's the story real quick. Girl that I know from the movies had asked me to come out and ghost hunt her place. Went out there and we all went through everything and nothing was happening. So I asked her, I said, anybody around here get killed? And she goes, well, yeah, the lady next door. And I'm standing there with two girls, one here and one here, right? The other people had left, because we'd all gone through there. And we're standing there and I said, ask if she's here, the lady that got killed. K2 meter goes, all 5 lights instantly, right? It hadn't gone off all night, right? So they look and I said, start talking to it, right? So she's talking. And then I jumped in and started asking things. I said, how many people are here? Is there more than one? Is there 2? Right? That's how you find out, And I usually trick them a little bit. But anyway, we're sitting there and I said, is there anybody who wants to cross over? And it goes all 5 lights. I said, this is a big decision. Are you sure? And it went all 5 lights. And the 2 girls are starting to, wow, what's going on here? I said, okay, what I want you to do, I said, I don't know if this is positive, but what I've heard, do you see a light? I said, go towards it, right? Are you walking towards it? It's going off again. And I said, all right, here's what I want to happen. I want to see this go down in strength so I know that you're going away from me. Okay? And it goes down to 3 lights. And the 2 girls are just looking back and forth. I said, are you almost there? And it goes down to 2 lights, right? Barely flickering. And I said, can you give us a sign that you made it? Right? And the girl on this side goes, right? And I did too. And if you ever hear something ghost hunting, the first thing you do not do is tell them what you said. Okay? Because that puts something in their mind. Okay? So I asked her, I said, did you hear something? She goes, I did. I said, so did I. What did you hear? And she looked at me and she just had this look on her face and she goes, I heard a man's voice. He said goodbye. I said, I heard it too. I have no other explanation.
This is your home?
It affects you forever. I mean, if you think that you actually took a lost soul and put him in heaven, told him how to get there and he actually listened and he got there, I mean, that's better than winning the lottery as far as I'm concerned. I mean, if you have a heart and think that that actually happened, did it really happen? I don't know. But circumstances tells me that he was listening and he was following the steps. And I said, can you, give us a sign you made it? Goodbye. So I just choose to believe he made it. Let's just put it that way.
So what is going on here? Why are so many people experiencing interactions in the way they are? This evidence is suggestive of life after death, but we've never captured a ghost. We can't take a deceased apparition, put it in a lab, study it, analyze the energy. How come we haven't done that? How come they haven't brought us back anything from wherever they may be? Now, that's interesting. But they cast shadows. They turn their head so people can tend and follow you. Most of the time when an apparition is seen, they're reported to try to communicate something of great interest to the person, but only rarely do they actually verbalize anything. They appear to cast a reflection in a mirror, occlude objects. They look physical, but they also appear non-physical, which is also a mystery because here again, you can have a group of people observing the same apparition, but only some of the people in that group will see it, which suggests a more psychological component to the phenomenon. Something that's actually similar to some other phenomenon, like unidentified aerial phenomena, a group of people will observe it, a few will see it for some reason. Is that a physiological thing? Is there some intention behind it? A unique sensitivity on the part of the individual to perceive something of that type? There's no explanation for it. It winks out, it goes away, leaves quite an enormous impression on the individual that's life-changing in many ways. People do not fear death anymore. They seem to contend that they have a great understanding of reality now for some reason, as if they had many important answers to the meaning of life, answered by their experience. They're more than grateful and receive comfort in knowing that what they believe to be a deceased relative is interacting with them. How can they not provide comfort?
After that, I was fascinated. I started reading the books that I could find and things like that. And to be honest, not a lot happened because, you have to go someplace that's haunted. But lo and behold, later on in life, my mom had cancer, and I went back to sit with her and take care of her. And she didn't sleep in bed. She would sleep in a recliner. Now, the way the room was set up, she was in the living room, and she could look down the hallway, past the bathroom, past the kitchen, into the back door. And finally, my mother's sitting there. Now, she's on drugs and things like that because she's battling, stage 4 cancer in both lungs. But my mother just looks over and she says to me, she goes, "Oh, my Indian is back." What? What Indian? What are you talking about? And she goes, "Oh, my Indian, he's been coming for years. He stands at the back door. He just stands there and looks down the hallway towards me." I went, "And you never told me this." I said, "I go all around the world ghost hunting. You never told me this." And she goes, "I know, he's here to watch out for me." And I was like, "Why didn't you tell me?" And she just smiled at me and she just says, "I've seen spirits my whole life."
You hear that? Yeah, it's a man talking.
They're either trapped or they don't want to leave, or they don't know that they can leave, which is interesting too. Very interesting theory. And, can you help them cross over?
We don't believe the spirits are trapped. Now, there may be some external circumstances that can cause that. If someone committed suicide, we've gone to places 80 to 100 years later than when they committed suicide, and their spirit is still there. We've heard them communicate. We've heard them give their name. But does that mean that spirits are trapped in a location? No. You can think of heaven as a place, and religion kind of lays it out as a place, but it's more of a plane, not a place. And we believe spirits have free will, just as we do as human beings. They can make their own choices, they can travel wherever they want, and they can be there in seconds. They are not stuck to a location. A lot of paranormal investigators today are bound to release them to the other side, into the light. We have run into some circumstances where we've done that. We haven't done it lately because today we believe that they're not stuck. If they're there for a reason. Those reasons can range from them looking over family members, protecting. And then you also have some that show up that are just plain annoyance, and we have asked and had them removed. But the circumstances they have free will, and they have a mind of their own and a consciousness just like they had on Earth, but a much more powerful one that can take them to any area they want.
I think if they could, they would. If they could leave, they would be gone if they wanted to. But I just think they're here because they're either attached to a possession that they can't let go of, or stuck in the trauma of a traumatic death, or just don't want to leave somebody they love. I don't know.
My opinion on whether it's easy or not for them to communicate is, I'm kind of torn on my response to that. We can turn on an EVP recorder or a ghost box and get response after response after response. We do notice that if we're trying to communicate with one individual, there is a time limit of which they drop off. Whether they are being restrictive due to energy levels that they're using to do it, whether it's because they only want to divulge so much information to not affect the life we're living today. We don't have those answers yet, but they are definitely paths we are going down to get further information.
Oh, did you hear that?
I did. Is there anyone in here? Can you say hello?
I think that some of the things that I've recorded and had contact with probably never lived here in any body. So I don't think all of them are spirits of dead people. At my age, I know more dead people than living, so I feel like I have an edge over some other investigators because I've got people on the other side that are actively trying to communicate with me. So there's always that.
Well, see, here's the problem with ghost hunting. It's conjecture. Everything about it is conjecture. Where the voices come from, is this really happening, blah, 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 blah. Okay? But it's happening.
So the question is what happens to the spirit when the physical body dies? While even science today has done various experiments and is saying that they believe that consciousness can and probably does survive death.
Consciousness is quite a word. There have been many thousands of papers written about consciousness over time by many people who are far smarter than I am. And we still don't know what consciousness is. We suspect that it is some separate entity from ourselves that governs the brain. It emerges from the physical universe. Or does the physical universe emerge from consciousness? And that's what people debate. Is consciousness all? And does consciousness persist after bodily death? If I had a gun to my head and asked what consciousness is, it's the fact that I'm aware of being aware. It's the fact that I can dictate what I want to do today. That's not my brain. I like to think it's me. I like to think that I'm telling my body to look to the right. Boom. That was me. I'm in control of my body. Now, I may be wrong. If that's a delusion, so be it.
The principles of physics say that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change form. So the next question that is asked is that when the physical body dies, where does the spirit go? Well, depending on what you believe in and what your history and background is, and maybe religious beliefs, that may be heaven, that may be hell, that may be just a universal consciousness of the energy of the spirit returning back from whence it came. But it takes memories, thoughts, consciousness with it. Can that spirit come back and live again? Well, there are studies showing that people have done that and they remember their past lives. There are studies of young kids explaining past lives, where they lived, what happened to them, how they died. There was a kid over in, I can't remember what country it was, but he was explaining about a life on Mars. And he explained to NASA detailed information about the planet Mars, which they were absolutely astounded at his ability and the fact that he was like 10 or 11 years old, explaining what the atmosphere was, the physical makeup of the planet. Those are the stories that really makes one think, okay, what's possible when the spirit leaves this physical plane and moves on?
I believe that the spirit that we are goes on after the body dies. I look at human bodies as like big meat sacks full of water, perfect for conducting electricity and energy, and that the actual human soul is the being itself, that we are magnificent, powerful beings, and we're just, riding along in the universe in this experience we're having in this little meat sack car. And when the motor breaks down, the battery dies, we just go get another one. I don't know where we go. I suppose that your religious upbringing and your preferences would dictate that. As far as I'm concerned, I have no idea. I don't know if we get to choose. I don't know where we go. All I know is none of us stay in here forever because ain't none of us getting out of here alive. So
we are bound to this earth by our 5 physical senses. That is what determines everything we hear, see, feel, smell, taste. But there is no way to identify that when I say, hey, that's red, that what I'm seeing is what you're saying, yeah, that's red. We'll agree it's red, but there's no way for me to know what your red looks like or for you to know what my red looks like.
And it makes you wonder about ghosts, right? Because just like us, we have certain abilities, innate abilities, our own biological technologies. So I always wondered, why don't you see ghosts on video as much? And it might be as simple as not knowing how a ghost is composed. They are limited too, right? Just because they can come through as an electronic voice phenomena doesn't mean that they can also manipulate light in the way that we were able to see them visually. So they might have limitations of their own.
What the heck was that? What the fuck was that? What the heck was that?
You heard that too.
Oh, absolutely.
That was in here.
It was
outside.
Who's in here? Say that again.
The other question that we always get asked is, how can you be sure this is what you're interacting with? How do you know it's spirits? Well, to answer that question, we don't. What we do know is that we are interacting with a consciousness that is not in physical body or in the location we're interacting with. What consciousness it is, we don't know that for sure. All we know is that we're getting answers to the questions we asked with timing and relevance to that question. To get somebody to believe you, we gave up on that 6 months after we started. There are people that believe that need no evidence at all. And there are people that don't believe that whatever evidence you show won't be enough. A friend of mine always says people who are trying to figure out if Bigfoot exists, they could have lost their keys and Bigfoot could hand it to them. And it wouldn't be good enough for them to say, oh, okay, he exists. So it's a tough battle, which makes this research extremely difficult because you've got people on both sides.
5, 2, 2. They're in here. Oh my God.
What? I didn't touch you.
No, I know.
What?
I think he just ran through me.
Yeah, I felt a gust.
Holy, he just ran through me. Look, I'm in points again.
I think there's consciousness after death with humans. I don't know what it is exactly, but through my own experiences with people that I know, loved ones, I've had the sense of communion with a friend that I had lost a long time ago. It was through primarily dream states, but it felt like a clear messaging from him that he's with me still. It's hard to say for sure because it was a dream, but there are other people that I know that, and people on the show that I talk to, that they've heard and felt and seen signs that there is life after death. And so I'm inclined to believe it, but believing in something is not the same as saying I know it for a fact. And does it give me comfort? Yeah, it kind of does. But I'm also quite comfortable with accepting that maybe what we think of as consciousness after life is really just the Akashic record, right? And so it's just a record imprinted on the universe of who we were in our time on this planet. And maybe that's what a ghost is, right? It's just like this quantum reflection, being that time really doesn't exist, right? So everything's existing at the same time, the past, the future, now. So we're really just seeing ourselves or other, individuals playing out, and it's sort of peeking through the veil, as it were.
I've been slapped, pushed. I had 3 huge scratches go from about here on my arm all the way to my wrist. And the funny part was we weren't even in a haunted location. We were there the night before, and we were at a restaurant sitting outside talking to some friends of ours. And I think I made the mistake by sharing with them that I was asking EVPs, gave the name of the spirit who gave me their name, explained the other information about what they told me, and I don't think they liked that. I didn't even feel the scratch. There were 3 people, including my wife, sitting at a table. I was standing, and I was just talking, and I had short sleeves on, and all of a sudden my wife goes, "Oh my God, you're bleeding, what happened?" Well, I hadn't even moved. I mean, I was just standing, and sure enough, I had 3 deep welts that didn't look like your typical scratch. You can almost see the burn imprint of where the I have pictures. The burn imprints where the fingers hit and then scratched down. It burned like crazy.
All right, we're here again.
I have had experiences with what people might consider a ghost. I'm a widow, and shortly after my husband died, I wasn't feeling so great, and I was laying on the couch with a wash rag on my head, and I was kind of just staring off into space, and I was kind of focused in between the space between the ceiling and me. And all of a sudden I saw this face press down as if somebody had some saran wrap in front of me and pushed their face through the saran wrap. I could see the impression of their face. I couldn't see anything but the white ceiling behind it, but it was that mold, and it was his face. And it was so detailed that I could see he was very concerned about me. And I said to him out loud, it didn't scare me. I said, "I'm okay. You can go. I'll be all right." And slowly that impression lifted back into nothingness, and I didn't see it anymore. Kind of reminded me of when you look at that page of nothing but colored dots, and then all of a sudden, if you look at it just the right way with one eye cocked sideways, all of a sudden this image pops out in 3D at you. That's how I saw him.
I'd gone down to see my dad. I was probably 24. Right, and he and I had not been speaking for years, and he invited me down. So I went down with a friend of mine, and I'd driven the whole way from Chicago, and I was tired, and my dad had one of his salesmen had left his car at the bar because it was his birthday. My dad was driving him back to get his car, which I thought was a really great idea, to take a drunk back to his car so he can drive home, but that's what they were doing. And I asked my dad, I said, "Well, I don't want to go back to the bar. I want to sleep. Where's the bedroom?" And he says, "Go in that one." So I go in the bedroom, and it's got a canopy bed, more like a lady's bed. And so I go in there, and I'm laying down, and the moonlight is coming in from the foot of the bed. And I lock the door. I always lock my door at night, and had one of those slider locks on it. And I laid down, and everybody was gone out of the house, right? I laid down, and I hear, right here, and I went. And I'm not instantly going paranormal. I was like, what was that, right? And, well, and then I hear again. Now I'm starting to wonder, right? And I thought, does he have a dog? So I got up, I looked under the bed, see if there was a dog under there snoring or something. I opened up the closet, nothing. So I closed it again, and I'm sitting there, and I can see the room because of the moon. There's nothing in there other than me. And I look up, and I see right to this side, I see an air conditioning vent. And I went, oh, the air conditioner turned off. And it does it again. And I'm like, the air conditioner doesn't turn off 3 times in a row, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm going, what is this? And I'm sitting up just like this in the bed, and I'm looking around, because I've got the light to look. And right here on my neck, never forget it, right here on my neck, and real loud, I could feel the heat. It went, ah. I jumped out of bed, grabbed the door, because the slider lock was on it. I couldn't find it, right? So I just went like this and went, snap, and broke the frame of the door, and went out and was standing in the front yard because he lived in a cul-de-sac. And about 5 minutes later, they pull up, and he comes out and he looks at me and he goes, huh? He got you, didn't he? This is the first day I'm there. I said, what? And he goes, ah. I said, you know about that? He goes, happens all the time.
We have rocks being thrown. In fact, not less than a month ago, I was down at our hospital. I was the only one in there. I'm holding a recorder. I'm standing in the old waiting room, which is very active. I'm asking to speak to Michael. Michael does not respond. Some other spirit responds, tells me to get out, and instantly throws a rock. This is a small room. It's probably not bigger than a third of this room that we're in. And this rock comes flying out of nowhere. And wow. you can hear it hit the floor and roll across.
And you find the rock.
I found the rock, and yes, I have this all on tape.
If there's any spirits in this lounge, can you say something to us?
Well, you can take that back to the whole communication process. If they can leave EVPs through mental energy or conscious energy and direct that to a device that's recording and make it sound like their voice, come across as their voice, in the spirit realm, why couldn't they easily create energy to slap you across the face, push you downstairs? From a scientific principle, it can be done.
My mother passed away. I had paranormal experiences with my mom. We had talked about death before she died, and she told me that she would come back and show me, if she could, that there was more than just this life. And by God, she did. The night of the day she died, in front of my husband even, her picture literally leaped off the wall in our stairwell, rolled down to the stairs with a crashing sound, and ended sitting straight up. And I'm like, the first thing I thought was, that's Mom. She said she was going to, and she did.
I was in Balgony Castle one time, and they had the Frank's box, and they were asking, this and that and the other thing, and I said, can I ask a question? They said, yeah. And I said, is there anything in the castle that we should be afraid of? The energy. So sometimes it doesn't take a long, drawn-out conversation. One of the things that I have, and I actually have this on film, was a K2 session that I had. And it was 2 floors down in a hotel in Edinburgh, Scotland. And it was right on with the answers, one right after the other after the other. I said, is there anybody else here? And it goes off all 5 lights. And I said, if I start counting, make it light up when there's how many people are here. And I said, are there 2? And it goes 5 lights. And he looks at me and I go, 3, nothing. 4, nothing. And he's looking like, you see he's confused. Right? And I said, are there 5? Nothing. I said, 2, boom, 5 again. And then he goes, oh. And I said, yeah, sometimes you got to throw a little curveball in there and just see if there's something intelligent listening. And obviously there was. When
I've done EVP sessions in investigations that we've done.
Do you have a name?
I have had, there's one EVP that I call Dr. Rupert, and it's the voice of an old woman. It's pretty clear. And she says, call Dr. Rupert. When we played back this EVP for the homeowner, they immediately got emotional, and they're like, that's Grandma so-and-so. I mean, they ID'd the voice as one of their deceased relatives. They were very emotional about it. One of my favorite EVPs of all time was captured when I was an investigator with my group in Indianapolis called Emriba. We had a very professional setup in a home, a single family home, who had complained about seeing a little girl running around upstairs in their house, and they don't have little girls in their home. The house was empty. We had our station set up in the garage, and in the living room we had my digital recorder was on the coffee table. We had another camera in the room that also had audio capability recording. And their family dog was the only thing in the house wandering around the house. And as the family dog, in the video you can see, as the family dog walks past the recorder that's on the coffee table, you hear this EVP, and it'll blow your socks off, because the EVP was the voice of a little girl. Clear as a bell. The dog's name was Ginger. That's what really knocked us all for a loop. A, we knew there was no children in the house. There wasn't anyone in there but us. And B, the dog's name was Ginger. And the EVP was recorded on the recorder that was on the coffee table by the dog. I mean, how can you, that stuff, that's great stuff. And that's so convincing. And getting these like this over the years has really fueled me and kept me going. That's my favorite of all time, though.
All right, last time we were here, you gave me your name. You said your name was Michael. Michael, are you here?
EVPs are the first step we take to find out if there are spirits in a location. But EVPs are never enough. We are always looking for multiple gadgets to react simultaneously to back up the evidence that we've captured. When you can get EMF meters, EVPs, there is such a huge variety of devices that are used within paranormal investigation. And there's not a device technically out there that's specifically made for paranormal. And the newer ones that are out today, yeah, they may be made for it, but do they really classify as being indicators of the paranormal? The answer to that question is no. There is not a device specifically made or that can truly identify. So that makes our job tougher. We have to find ways to interact. There isn't a device out there that skeptics are not wanting to come forth and go, well, that's not true. Spirit boxes, oh, you're picking up radio. SLS devices, which capture images of spirit as they're used for the Xbox to trace the human body. Are those devices made to map out and look for human shapes? They are, no doubt about it. But there are experiences where multiple pieces of equipment, regardless of what that equipment is, interacts in a way where you get a voice, you get EMF activity, you get temperature changes, you get responses on a ghost box, and then it takes another step forward. You get slapped, pushed. A rock is thrown from a room you are the only one in, and that has happened to us multiple times. They know you're there. They're letting you experience them on an additional level beyond equipment flashing or blinking or beeping. They're giving you their voice. They're telling you they're there, and they're giving you a physical reaction that wouldn't occur under normal circumstances if they didn't cause it.
I do think that people should be very open-minded to believing in ghosts and EVPs. And I think that it's because what it's saying is that just like in our modern world, there is the other, right? There's your tribe, my tribe, this part of society, this subculture, this country, and so on and so forth. And, thankfully to space travel, we've had those images of that small blue Earth that reminds us that we're all in this together, right? We're in this shared earthbound reality. And that's profound, and the effects of that, while not fully evolved and accepted by some, have had a very positive impact on human society. And I think that this phenomena goes even deeper. Maybe a ghost isn't this thing in another separate reality, but in a sense, it's part of this shared reality. We just can't see it right now as human beings. We haven't learned how to measure it quite yet. But perhaps part of our evolution will be one day we also will be able to send an EVP to the other side. Maybe not just using a device, but using our own mind to do that. That would be awesome. I'd love to see human beings evolve to the point where we just accept all levels of reality as a shared space. So I think opening up your mind to the idea and possibility that ghosts exist, that spirits exist, it's a very humanitarian concept. That we're all in this together, and let's seek out answers together so that we can help one another and better understand the nature of reality, which is to say that we'll better understand ourselves.
You've tried to communicate with spirits all over the world now.
When you take a look at the different evidence that's captured, one of the questions that we usually get is, what's the strongest evidence? Is it an EVP? Is it spirit box? Is it a photograph? Is it a video? Those questions are hard to determine because it really depends on what it is you're looking for in the evidence you're trying to capture. Like I said about EVPs, the great thing about them is you get a response, you get the message to your answer to your question. You can tell whether it's male, female, child, whether there's an accent. That to us is the ultimate evidence because we asked a question and we got a response when there's no one in the room or maybe even the entire building. Photographs are great because they do capture some amazing things. Photographs are a little harder to substantiate today because of technology such as Photoshop. A lot of things can be faked. Back when you were dealing with 35mm cameras, it was much harder to put an image in or overlap images. Video, same thing. There is what's known as CGI, and a lot of stuff that floats around out on the internet today, you can clearly tell somebody tried to manipulate it with CGI. CGI is not easy to do and expensive, but we have seen it. So what's the best evidence? Well, to us, the best evidence is a combination of all of them. The more evidence you can get, whether that be pictures, video, EVPs, the more you get to substantiate saying there's something here. Here are all the different things we captured. That is the best evidence you can get.
Perhaps the most convincing evidence of life after death, or the survival hypothesis, are in rare but validated cases that are called peak Indarian cases. These are instances where people who contend to have a near-death experience report an interaction with somebody. In one case, this individual, who is well known, has written books on the topic and has lectured on it, says, for instance, that he had met a woman, was given her name and information about her and the parents. When he recovered from his life-threatening illness, he reported that information to his parents, the woman's name and other information that the parents contend with fierce determination that he could not have known. We have other cases whereby people who contend that they've experienced the alternate reality, specifically in a near-death experience, with the beautiful landscape, with the Supreme Being, with the profound feeling of love and connection to whomever. Is that a representation of piercing the veil and experiencing an alternate reality? When they come back with accurate information from someone who the parents contend was that person's sister in this case, who had died before this individual was born and was never given information about that person, yet reports accurate information to parents. Well, what are we talking about? Subjective evidence, anecdotal information, evidence that does not ascribe to the scientific method or our current paradigm. So it's discredited, denounced, for a variety of different reasons that are used as an explanation to consider a near-death experience, for instance, to be nothing more than the hallucinatory reaction of an oxygen-deprived, chaotic, existing brain, which may be true. If it is, how did these individuals get accurate information that the parents or whomever contend was impossible, other than by talking directly to that person, who this person will contend was deceased and met in some alternate reality as part of a near-death experience? I can't explain that. Maybe it is explainable. But to me, if you're pressuring me to give you any evidence that says what is highly suggestive of, I'd say the Peake and Darien case.
You have to have that skepticism no matter how far down the path you go. I started with it from an extreme beginning, and it's never fully left. No matter what we capture, I go, okay, is there a reasonable explanation for this? Was this something that can be explained? And we will go through which is the whole reason we use multiple recorders. If it is a natural sound in the environment, it's going to show up on at least the majority of them.
And that has to happen sometimes, right?
Oh, it does, absolutely. We think we have something paranormal. We review the multiple recorders, realize it's on all of them, and then we usually have video cameras set up as well from different angles to go, okay, there was a bird that hit the window, or, so we try to go through every aspect we can to make sure that if we're showing something, we don't have anything or justification to say we can't explain this. When we first started, which is what I said about the orbs, Cherie and I posted what we thought was the most amazing orb capture ever caught. We were in the Hotel San Carlos. I called out for this woman, Candy, who I spoke about before, and this orb comes from the back of the room, goes all the way across the bar, right up to the camera, and she responds. We posted it, and every person in the world goes, that's dust. And it was dust. But we didn't know. We had just started. We were inexperienced, and I'll never forget that, ever.
Can you move the balloon here, please? Can you stop the balloon? The balloon is moving.
That's the other thing about being a paranormal investigator is you need to listen to other groups. The whole concept of para-unity is a great concept. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen. People don't want to share their evidence or their locations of where they captured it. They want to keep it to themselves. They want to bask in the limelight of what they captured. The paranormal is a huge expanse of determining what's happening. No one is going to figure this out on their own, and only through a wide variety of researchers will we ever be able to start to understand answers.
I've had people say to me, how can you believe in this stuff and believe in God and be a good Christian and all that? And it's like, to me, that religion and this have absolutely nothing to do with each other. This is science to me, and religion is something completely different. So I never had any conflicts with things like that when I did research and investigation.
And I think that, unfortunately, there's not enough scientific study done on the paranormal. Now, I know that Billy Bigelow had, spent money at the Skinwalker Ranch to do studies. And I know that, cable programs are now, producing and spending money to create shows. And so there is some funding for isolated points of study. But what we need is something that's more like a crowd-funded, transparent, university-level, ongoing study of the phenomena.
We are scratching the surface with stone knives and bare skins, grumbling at it all, pounding our chest, applying scientific principles that simply do not apply to what people are reporting. Now, is it hallucinatory? Can a simple explanation be given to individuals who come up with these unique conclusions of interacting with deceased people? What are they talking about?
I can feel you. You are definitely near me.
We need a control. So I've seen experiments done where, someone takes a device, a meter, and it's supposed to read electromagnetic waves. And they close it off and encase it so that there's no outside interference. And if you actually pick something up in that case, that's extraordinarily fascinating. Because the question is, how is this meter picking up some kind of voice or communication when, by all accounts, you've created a shield around it to block out? I think that's very compelling. But here's the clincher. So if a EVP is a message or communication from a ghost, that ghost or entity, in whatever form it's in, is manipulating energy and translating that into something that either a human could hear or into a radio wave that the device can pick up. The problem is, if the device itself is encased, how does a ghost manipulate the energy that it has access to, and to send that to the device itself? So what I would like to propose, and this would require some serious funding, and would be a scientific study where, instead of the device being encased in a Faraday cage or shield, you go to a haunted site that has repeated a phenomena and create a giant Faraday cage, let's say over a haunted house. So surrounding that whole house and immediate property. And then do your meter takes there. So then do your readings, your recordings, ask your questions, see if you can get a response. If that's the case, then again, you're getting a response from something that is not coming from the outside world. And what you're also doing is allowing the spirit that's there access to more inherent energy. Human beings, just at rest, we emit about 100 watts of energy. And every object, a wood board in the building of the house, grass, rocks, everything emits some level of radioactivity. And so if we're going with the hypothesis that a ghost is taking energy from its surroundings and manipulating it in a way so that it can be picked up by a device's microphone, then instead of closing this off into a Faraday cage and closing off a larger area into a Faraday cage, you're giving that entity that much more access to energy that it could manipulate and push towards the device. Again, this is totally hypothetical. I have no idea if this would work or not, but I think it's worth the line of investigation.
And you know what? 10 to 30% of Americans claim to have experienced an apparition, a sensed presence, a visual presence of a deceased relative or friend. If it's hallucinatory, why is it always of a deceased person 80% of the time? What other explanations can attribute to people experiencing a deceased apparition at the same time? Does that type of multi-person experience lend credibility to the fact that this is not hallucinatory in nature? I mean, we live in a paradigm that is not appropriate, that science cannot answer, that cannot be accurately applied to determine the validity of the types of experiences that people are reporting. And so most of these individuals live in silence and do not share their unique experiences with others for fear, again, of ridicule. People believe it to be true, and this is the key. To millions of people, they are having valid experiences that are altering their personality. Many people are claiming to be transformed in a psychosocial way after they interact with another reality, and they claim to do so in many different ways. I am not claiming that. I'm just simply relating the evidence for others to interpret. That's why I wrote the book, Life After Death, an analysis of the evidence, and more recently, Unseen Forces, the integration of science, reality, and you, trying to figure out, not coming up with any answer for sure, because I don't have one. And for those who claim to have answers, all I can say is that your ego is showing there are no answers. At most, I will say that something quite profound is occurring to millions of individuals that defy logical explanation. What that is, I don't know.
Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. And so all we're asking is, can our energy as human beings simply transform into another form of energy? Everything you feel and think and have experienced, positive or negative, will continue to exist for essentially eternity. It's extremely exciting